I'm Adam Clorth, the Technical Director of Integrated DNA Technologies, and today I'm here at iGEM headquarters with the President of iGEM, Randy Rettberg. Randy, I think to start out with, why don't you tell us what iGEM is and what the competition is about?
iGEM stands for International Genetically Engineered Machine Competition. We have 300 teams, about 5,000 to 5,500 participants from all the regions of the world. About a third of the teams are from Asia, about 60 from mainland China, about another third are from Europe, and a third from North America, and we even have about 20 teams from Latin America, Mexico and South America. It's geographically very diverse. The teams are undergraduates in college, older than undergraduates, and we even have 40 high school teams this year. So it's really gotten to be quite big. The teams raised money and registered in March. They have been working all summer long with their DNA at their schools on their projects. They're busy now documenting their projects and finishing them up and getting ready to go back to class. And we're then going to have a big jamboree the last weekend of October at the Heinz Convention Center in Boston. And about 3,000 people will attend.
How does the competition work? What are the criteria, and how does a winning team win?
You normally think of a competition as a race, and there's a finish line, and all the participants are racing to the finish line, and it's all equal. iGEM doesn't work like that. If we did that, there'd only be one answer, right? Sure. Instead, what the team do is their goal is to impress the judges. It turns out that's a fabulous thing to ask the students to do, because then they can be as innovative and think up crazy things and go and do it. So the result is, out of our 300 teams, we'll get 300 different projects. The judges, of course, have the hard part of, well, which one is most impressive and all of that, but that all works out very well.
How did the iGEM competition start? Can you give us some history on?
My background was that I was an engineer. I wanted to design computers when I was 12 years old, right? All my friends thought I was really weird. But I got to go to MIT, and every course I took was to answer that question of how I can make my computers better. When I graduated, I joined a company called BBN and worked on the ARPANET, which was the beginning of the network. There were 24 computers in the network when I joined in '72. After that, I got to design and build the computer we use as a switch in the ARPANET, and then a big parallel processor called the Butterfly. I quit all of that and went to Apple Computer and made machines that were used by hundreds of thousands of people.
Sure.
And then later, at the end of my computer career, I was the CTO of the storage division of Sun Microsystems. So I really have an engineering background. My friend Tom Knight had stayed at MIT, but he still was an engineer. Tom and I both wanted to carry those engineering design principles and points of view to biology. Tom got a head start on all of that, and so he worked out assembly methods and really coined the term synthetic biology as we're using it in this century. So that's how it got started. Now, at MIT, they don't have any classes in January. And so late 2002, we thought we needed to do something, for the students, so they have some fun thing to do in January. And we ran a design course with 16 students divided into 4 teams of 4 students each. And we told them, we'll have your DNA synthesized, you design something up, and you can come back in the summer and try it out. We were dreaming. The synthesis didn't happen by the summer, and in the end, only half the parts actually got synthesized. But the teams had a great time. And we did it again in 2004, and then in the summer of 2004, we did a competition with 5 schools, all of them close friends of ours, so if something went wrong, they wouldn't tell anybody. And then in the next year, in 2005, we expanded to 13 teams, and we really went international. We had Toronto, we had Cambridge University, ETH Zurich, and it's been expanding like that since.
Wow. So can you tell me a little bit of what it's like to be on an iGEM team and sort of what the iGEM experience is to the individual levels? I understand that covers a wide range, but if you could give us a bit of an idea.
Okay, so the first question is, how did iGEM teams start? There's a lot of different ways because you got a lot of teams, right? Sometimes it's that a student or a couple students will say, I heard about iGEM, I want to do it. Sometimes they're even high school students. And they're actually high school students that are making their college decision based on iGEM teams, or at least partially based on the iGEM teams. We hear about that from professors and friends in the iGEM community, and they say, well, my child is thinking about where to go to school, and they're wondering if such and such a school has a good iGEM team.
Oh, that's great.
Right? And some of the students, as they graduate and go to college, that's their goal. And they go and they create an iGEM team. And now how do they create it? Well, they have to have more students, so they go and put up posters, or they go to some of the big lectures and they talk about making an iGEM team and ask people to sign up. Sometimes there's a different path, which is the professors start up the iGEM teams. We actually have a mixture now where previous iGEM participants are becoming professors and saying, well, I got to start my iGEM team because that's what got me going. I got to do that for my students. Once they decide to have an iGEM team and they build up a little bit of participants, then they have to raise money. And that's a hard problem. You have to pay to register a team for iGEM. It costs $5,000 this year. And that's a lot of money for the students.
It is.
But it turns out that means they have to involve other people who have the money. They have to learn how to ask. The teachers, the instructors have to go to the head of the department and say, head of the department, I need $5,000 to register an iGEM team.
Yeah.
And it's going to be great. And our rival school, they've been doing it for 2 years. We're falling behind. Or, such and such a country that we're a rival of, they've been doing it for a while and our country needs it. Our students need this. That part is critical. Turns out the money is local. The science is global. The money's local. The money is spent on our kids, our students. So they get the money and they register, but they're still in class. It's March. So they have meetings, they have clubs. They often look at the previous iGEM teams and see what they did. Sometimes they're surprised at how much effort went in, and they start to realize they're going to have to work really hard. They might need more participants. At some of the schools, they let people sign up to join iGEM, and they get 3 or 4 times as many. Maybe you have 10 slots for iGEM students and you have 60 applicants.
Yeah.
Then you have to interview and work out a process of deciding on which applicants are going to get to participate. Sometimes the school registers another team. And that's happened particularly in some of the Chinese teams that have 30 students or 40 students involved. After that, you have to learn about microbiology. And so there are often courses that are happening in the spring at the schools that were put in place because of the iGEM teams. So you have schools that wouldn't have otherwise made an undergraduate level lab in molecular biology with such a focus on the synthetic biology, but they have to because the other teams are doing that. And your students are going to fall behind if you're not teaching them the right thing. The other thing that happens, of course, is the teams have to decide on the project. We haven't told them what project to do. It's really important that the student teams decide on their own project. If it's the professor's project, then the professor likes it, but the students don't care as much.
Yes.
If it's their own project, then anything that they need to know, they will go learn. There's like the old model of the professors was that the students would come into class and the professor say, well, we're going to learn this on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We're going to have a test. Make sure you learned it. The iGEM version of that is the professor comes to his office and the iGEM students are standing around outside. They say, huh? And the students say, well, we need to know which way we should do this particular protocol. There are 5 ways to do it, and we don't know which one's the best. And he says, no, there are 4 ways. I say, no, we checked it out. And they argue about what protocol is best because the students need to know that at that time. That's a more active, involved kind of learning. Now, eventually classes get out. The students stay at their school, work in their lab. They have to have computer resources. Because we asked for the money up front, all the different parts of the department are helping the students. They actually get a lab. It's assigned to them. They have resources. They have to raise a lot of money. the teams generally raise about $50,000 on average. That pays for them to attend the Jamboree, pays for stipends for students over the summer, and does all the different things that they need. It's a lot of money. It's hard to raise, but that's one of the themes of iGEM. We don't make it easy, so that lots of people can do it. We make it worth doing.
In many aspects, it sounds almost like a startup that these
That's right.
students are doing.
Yeah,
So-
iGEM has many aspects. There's the aspect of the education. There's the aspect of having this intense activity. There's the team, which you don't normally get in science in undergraduate school. At the end of the summer, the students document their projects, and then they come to a Jamboree. That's the Jamboree we're holding at the Heinz Convention Center. And they give a presentation, they have posters, they have written this up on their wiki, we have workshops, and a lot of activities like that.
Wow. So this is a high bar for undergrads and high school students to reach. Is it something that you've ever thought about making easier, or is the competition and the level that you have something that is integral to the success?
Yes, the answer is that we demand a lot of the teams. But if you think about what's wonderful in sports, suppose I have an easy sport, right? Which is, throw balls over into the corner. How many balls can you get into the corner? Who cares, right? This is no fun. On the other hand, you have some sport that's hard, where the competition is tough, where you have to struggle really hard, and you fail. You have failure.
Yeah.
And you have heartbreak. And there's crying, right? And then you work harder, and you achieve. You remember that.
Yeah.
That goes into your core. So that same thing happens in iGEM. We ask the students in surveys, and I always read all the words. I don't care about the numbers as much, but I read the words, right? And what I hear is that same thing, that this has been the best experience of my life. So that's an example.
So the repository that you have, you're not just building a competition here, but you're building a body of knowledge and a body of information.
That's right. So the Registry of Standard Biological Parts, the iGEM Registry of Standard Biological Parts, it is not just names and sequences. It has documentation. It's made by the teams, so it's all student generated, but many of the parts in there have great detail in their documentation, many curves, pictures. We actually use a wiki for that part of it so that it's easy, and it can contain any kind of thing. Sometimes there's movies, a lot of times it's graphs. So there's that part of it. The other part is that there's a sharing that goes on. It's important for the teams, in order for them to succeed, they have to help other teams. They also have to make parts and put them into the registry and document them well. That is something that has become a core part of iGEM. I only get to go to a few of the talks during the Jamboree, but every talk I went to last year, out of about 6, near the end of the talk, the students talked about the work they did to prepare the parts, put them in the registry for the teams that come after them. They want their parts to be used, and they want to share. They want to be a part of that community.
Wow. And this registry, as I understand it, started out as a physical registry as well of physical sequences deposited into freezers and storage areas like that. Is that something that's going to continue, or do you see that changing in the future?
Well, that's where IDT has come in really big, right? For a long time, since the 2001, when we were talking about this beginning, the idea of microbiologists manipulating their DNA, cutting and pasting and doing, point changes through PCR and all kinds of stuff, that seemed odd. There's been, my friend Tom said that if you went around and talked to a microbiologist, so what are you doing? They say, oh, I'm working on blah, 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 cure such and such and such. They don't know, what are you doing now? Oh, I'm manipulating my DNA. And how much do you do this? Well, about half the time. So if you got rid of that, if they didn't have to do that, maybe biology goes twice as fast, right? And so sequencing let us read the DNA and get the information out. But synthesis lets you build the DNA. And in the synthetic biology world, microbiologists wouldn't touch their DNA. They'd type in all the letters, they send the emails off, put in the forms, and it would all come back FedEx, ready to use. That's a future that is just the right future. That's where it all should go, and that's where it all will go. But IDT did an amazing thing. In such a generous offer, they gave every team 20,000 bases of free custom DNA. They let the teams live in that future. The teams have really been picking up on that. They look at the parts and all, they go, well, that's all very confusing. How about if I just design my entire gene, my entire plasmid, and just send it off and it's made by IDT. And then it comes back. And what the team did in the interim, I don't know. Maybe they had a good time, or maybe they did some more work on their project. But then it comes back and they stitch the big pieces together and then they use it. That has been working an enormous amount this year. Last summer, I went to a meeting at Uppsala, and about half the teams, that's how they were making their DNA. That's how they were doing their project. When you do that, it gives you a freedom. It doesn't just save you time, it also gives you a freedom. And that freedom is that because you're not investing your time, you don't care where the DNA came from. There's no value to you of happening to find a piece of DNA which is convenient.
Yeah.
It's just as good to specify the ACTs and Gs yourself. In fact, it's better. It's easier.
So you don't have to work with what nature has around. You can design it de novo yourself.
That's exactly right, yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And that is something that has just been totally wonderful, totally revolutionary. It is where these students' lives should be after they graduate and are off in the real world doing synthetic biology. And I'll tell you, if they go to labs that don't have a good synthesis budget, they're going to go find another lab.
Budgets brings us into kind of another question here. It seems like in recent years, there's become much more interest from venture capitalists, government entities, and different organizations with money that want to invest in synthetic biology.
Yeah.
And how do you see that moving forward? Where do you see things going, and what are the trends that you expect?
Yeah, so that's really the wonderful part. The reason we did iGEM in the first place, the reason that we started doing synthetic biology 2001, 2002, wasn't that it would be a fun thing to try out. It wasn't that it was an experiment. I wonder if we can. Instead, it was really, there's an opportunity for a change. There's a hole. Biology has been focused on science. And the people who even try to do engineering, they're actually the scientists. They don't have that background. You know, for me, wanting to design computers when I'm 12, that's an engineering goal. I wanted to make computers. I went to Apple so that more people could use the computers that I built, right? That's the reason. What's the same thing in biology? Well, the same thing in biology is not that you want to make a discovery, but rather that you want to make something that everybody's going to use.
Sure.
Right? And so right now, you're in a place where there are a lot of companies that are manufacturing appropriate high-value molecules, such as fragrances and flavors, medicines, and they're doing that with cells as a technology. They don't care. They're not excited about the cells. They just want to make the product. And the cells turn out to be the very best technique around to manipulate molecules.
Sure. So we're thinking of life not necessarily as life on its own, but as a machine or a tool that we can use to manufacture things.
That's right.
Wonderful.
That's a huge change. This has been an important general topic in iGEM from its very beginning. Is it okay, and how do we act in a way that is honestly responsible? Since we have so many students, and they're going to go off and be the leaders of this field, it's really important that they have the right points of view when they start. It's normal for the public to be concerned that they'll be scientists and they'll be excited about their work, and they won't care about whether it's right or wrong or what the public is thinking about it.
Or even whether it's safe.
Or even where it's safe, yeah. And this is not what we do in iGEM. For teams to win medals in iGEM, they must cooperate with other teams, but they also must engage the civil society around them. Sometimes they do that through educational programs. Sometimes they do that by actually getting the people around them involved in the design of the projects that they're doing. A simple example of that is Imperial making a bacterial cellulose filter for water purification. You could do that in the lab and say, well, look what I did, but they involved the people in London's water treatment plant. What do you need? What do we have to worry about in order to do this well that you could use it? Once you're making cellulose, of course, you filter out, the large debris, but you can put enzymes on there that collect particular pollutants that have to be removed and are hard to remove.
Sure.
And so they did that. They had their project, and it's now being tested in the pilot plant of the London water treatment.
That's amazing.
System.
So these are literally coming out of the lab and going
Yes,
into the real world.
in a direct way. The other way they're doing that is that they're startups. If you think about these iGEM teams, they're like little startups, right?
Sure.
They have to raise money, a lot of money. In fact, one iGEM student came up to me a few years ago and he gave me his iGEM business card. I thought that's pretty cool. They have iGEM business cards now, right? And what was his title? His title was fundraiser. He had raised over $60,000 for his team. Now let's suppose you're doing your startup, right? And you're looking at who you might hire. Would you hire that guy?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
That's
right?
an amazing achievement for an undergrad.
For an undergrad, that's exactly right. And so there are a lot of startups that are coming out of iGEM. The one that is perhaps the biggest from our point of view is Ginkgo Bioworks, because the founders of that company were Tom Knight, my friend, and his students and Drew Endy's students that all went together, and they are now doing all of the things we've been talking about in their company. So there's all of that. There's also the governments. The biggest activity in the governments is that the UK government is providing over £100 million to iGEM teams, to schools, and there's support for iGEM teams, and various trusts and stuff are providing stipend support for iGEM teams, and so all of that is expanding. The venture world is starting to appreciate that there is a new thing happening, and that this synthetic biology isn't a piece of just the old thing. It really is a new place that has great opportunities. And so I think we crossed over to the point where the venture people are now providing more funding than all the governments in the world.
Oh wow!
So
we really do have the ear of.
It's really happening.
Wonderful.
For us, for Tom and I, it's great because that was all the goal.
Yeah.
The goal was to make a new revolution, and nothing less. I was involved in the internet and computer revolution. I thought that was great fun, and it's great to be in the position where we're doing another one. But it's all starts slow, but then it goes really far.
Sure. So where do you see then in the next 3 to 5 years, where do you see the competition going, and perhaps in a broader sense, where do you see synthetic biology going?
Well, so I think the most important thing that is happening in synthetic biology is the switch to synthesis. I think that in many, many different ways that frees synthetic biologists up to do more things. It also lets them do things like make 100 versions of something. Go and find all the sequences, and pick 100 you like, and make them all, and then go test them all. That is happening even with iGEM teams now. The team from MIT synthesized a lot of variety and then tested to see which ones were the right ones. They would never have done that if they had to go and manipulate the DNA themselves. They would have become discouraged.
Yeah.
They said, I could never finish that in the summer. But because of that, because of DNA synthesis, and because IDT provided that to all the iGEM teams this year, MIT was able to do the right project, the one they wanted to do. So that, I think, is the most important thing. There are a number of companies who are coming online with more and more synthesis.
Sure.
But that's dramatically important. The next thing that happens is this continuation of parts, but moving away from the samples. One day, pretty soon, perhaps a couple of years from now, iGEM will stop doing samples.
Stop having anything in freezers?
Yeah, who cares, right? It's in the computers.
Yeah.
That's a better place, easier to back up, right? In part of iGEM right now, one of the things that happens is we send out a kit of parts, a box. And we send it out to all the teams around the world. And in that box, there's pins and iGEM stickers and things, and the card that represents the IDT offer, which is very important,
Sure.
right? And then 384 well plates full of parts. And then at the end of the year, they work hard and they send the parts back to us. And we have Vino, one of the members of the staff. He gets covered in all the UPS boxes, and the UPS man comes in every day with big piles of boxes. But all that physical DNA movement is something of now, and it ends. So that's the first part. Then what's left with the registry is the information. Because if you can make any sequence, you have a puzzle. What one should I make? What should I send? What ACTs and Gs should I type in to get the DNA that I want that's going to work right? And we don't have any tools that will let you specify it just from first principles of physics. And so instead, you want to build on what other people have done. And the registry lets you do that because there's all these teams and all these students, and they've made lots of well-documented parts. So that's the second step. The next step is tools, and software tools that will help you design, help you keep track of this. One of the things that I think will be kind of a natural result of synthesis is that kind of before synthesis you ran at the rate that you could run in the lab in terms of how much DNA you could have. You think about like music, right? For a long time people thought music could not be digital because it was air, it was vibrations in the air. Had to be. And so you had a record and you could play it at the speed of a record.
Yeah.
Right? And so if I wanted to send you a record, I could send you the record. I might be able to play it to you over the telephone, but I had to play it to you at record speeds.
Sure.
Right? Now we've made it all digital. There's no records. It's not physical at all. Now I can send albums in seconds.
Yeah.
I can move entire videos. I can do all this on my cell phone. So do the same thing with DNA and synthesis. When you break it away from the physical libraries in freezers, then there's no reason you can't make a lot of it.
Yeah.
There's no reason why I can't do 1,000 variants of something. Then I have to be able to measure it. That's the next step. The measurement topic has two pieces. One is how to do measurement of a lot of things efficiently, so you're back in robotics, a more industrial point of view, which will be a challenge for all of the professors in their labs, which means that third parties are going to have to start to offer those as services. The second thing that happens is that there's a generally accepted point of view, which is that the same thing measured in two different labs will get two completely different results.
Yes.
Right? So a couple of years ago at iGEM, it turns out we have hundreds of labs all over the world. So we said, we will try that out. We're going to see if it's true. And we sent out the same thing to all of these teams, and we asked whoever wanted to, and there were about 60 or so of the teams, measure it. And by golly, it turned out to be true.
You had 60
What we
different
got,
measurements.
well, yeah, entirely different. You couldn't correlate them at all, nothing, right? But we've been working on pinning that down. The normal reason that it didn't correlate was one of them says, well, yeah, I measured this with this technique and this instrument, and I measured it with something else.
Yeah.
But there's the third part that's even more fun, which is sometimes you said, well, I improved it. I made a better one, I measured that.
Yeah.
Aren't you happy? It's kind of like we send meter sticks out to everybody, right? And so I made a 10% longer meter stick, it's better. So the measurement becomes the next thing. For iGEM, the next big thing that happens for us is that we have 30,000 people who have gone through iGEM.
Yeah.
Including the people this year. That's a lot. It's a big community. They had a transformative experience in iGEM, and now they're off being important in the world.
Yeah.
They're being the leaders they're being professors, they're being leaders of centers for synthetic biology. They're starting up companies, they're working for companies. And what are they doing? Many of them would like to stay friends with iGEM. Some of them would like to be mentors. We have high school teams now. It's a good opportunity for people to be mentors. And we need to have workshops on different topics. So our next step really is to engage that global community of iGEM alumni and friends.
Yeah.
and kind of get them to be able to work together and find each other.
Yeah,
So that's the next big thing for us.
That's a wonderful group of people to bring together, I think.
That's right. And then, of course, there's the entire safety, security, and all of that. And we have a big program on that, where the teams have to say what they're going to do, what their lab is like, what they're working with. And we have a committee of experts in safety from the regulatory parts of many different countries. And so that continues as well. What does that mean in a world where DNA is synthesized? What does that mean in a world where people are sharing things a lot?
Sure.
Things change.
Yeah.
And so we need to be a part of that continuing.
Absolutely. These are questions we ask at IDT as well, and I think it's great to hear that we're both thinking very similarly on this.
Right, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
This is also something, from IDT's standpoint, that we involve, some of our federal law enforcement with to give us direction. Is that something?
Oh, yes. At the Jamboree, one of the most popular workshops is the FBI workshop, because the FBI is a sponsor of iGEM.
Sure.
This, by the way, this was a great help. Years ago, before this happened, journalists would call up and say, well, what about bioterrorists? And I would try to argue why that wasn't such a big problem. But as soon as we got the FBI as a sponsor, I was able to answer, the FBI takes care of that. The journalists never ask a second question. So that part's good. But the Ed Yu from the FBI gives a presentation about making science safe, safeguarding science in biology. And that lecture is attended by typically about 1,800 people. 1,800 of the participants in iGEM attend that and listen to it. And it's a great lecture. It's really important to have a community where the basic values are strong, where an understanding of what it means to have good behavior, what to do if somebody isn't doing good behavior. It's important that the community be able to stand up
Absolutely.
And respond.
And it seems like that ties in very well with the value of community that you have within
That's right.
the iGEM team and within the competition.
That's right. That has been important to us from the beginning, because if we're making a new field, if synthetic biology is going to be a new field that's actually as important as the Industrial Revolution or the Information Revolution, I call it the matter revolution, the molecule revolution, if you will.
Yeah.
If we're going to be doing that, it's going to be important that the people who are the leaders of that have a feeling of community, not just of independent capitalism. You have to have both to make it work out well.
Well, this has been a wonderful talk. Randy, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with us, and it's been wonderful to be here.